Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here as always. Today we've got an awesome video, actually one that I've been meaning to make for a while now in the Polkadot ecosystem. And so who better to bring on than Dan Reeser, the VP of Growth at Acala, one of the most prominent projects in the Polkadot space. So Dan, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So I guess the best place to start is, of course, introducing yourself and kind of giving folks a background and how you got into the space and then into the Polkadot world as well.
Yeah, for sure. So it's been an interesting ride over the last, it's been about 3.5 years in the industry now. I think we were talking earlier, I came out of undergrad, I went to Indiana University, and had a class at the end of school about the deep web and Tor and Bitcoin, and it kind of blew my mind and really opened me up to this whole new kind of part of the internet. So
Mhm.
immediately started diving into Bitcoin back then, taking some classes from Andreas Antonopoulos and all that, and then went into pharmaceuticals and kind of totally went a different path, but still had that kind of interest in the back of my mind. So kept in touch with crypto, slowly kind of invested a little bit into Bitcoin just out of my paychecks. And at the end of 2017, I really worked hard. I was leaving the pharmaceutical industries to go to the Cornell MBA program, and I was excited about
Mhm.
that. But I had about 6 months off, and flew to Miami, went to the North American Bitcoin conference, and ended up getting a pre-MBA internship in crypto. That kind of
Mhm.
quickly snowballed into a full-time job offer, and my boss at the time told me, "You don't need your MBA. Just come into crypto. No one here cares about MBAs," which, looking back, was true. And
Yeah.
I decided to go full time in that company. Worked about a year and a half there. Then that led me to Web3 Foundation, which was really what I saw as the next thing coming for crypto with Polkadot. So I made the move over to Web3 Foundation, thanks to my boss Hutch, who hired me there, and was there for a year and a half. So got to work on the Kusama launch back in late 2019, and then the Polkadot launch in
Mhm.
2020. And the natural next step for me after about a year and a half at Web3 Foundation was to me, which was even more exciting, was the parachain level. So we'll get into this, I think, a little bit later, but all these blockchains building on Polkadot, that's where the applications are going to be, all the users. So
Mhm.
the next kind of natural progression for me was to that level. So that's what led me to Akala as of February this year. So been lucky enough to work with the Akala team for about 9 months now.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting space to work in, and particularly in this burgeoning area. Like folks who've watched my channel for any length of time know that I've been harping on interoperability and general purpose protocols for interoperability so that we don't have this fragmented mess of blockchains. And Polkadot's one of the most prominent in that space. That being said, Dan, you're one of the things that you're known for on Twitter and other, sort of social environments is sharing concise, easy to understand content on Polkadot. Could you maybe give like a brief intro for someone who's new to this video, just getting started with Polkadot and like kind of what it is?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics. So yeah,
Yeah.
Polkadot was actually one thing that's important that I always kind of have to mention first, because it's the tech is always great, but it also
Hmm.
all comes down to the people behind the tech. And
Hmm.
the person who started Ethereum with Vitalik is a guy named Gavin Wood. He wrote the white paper after Vitalik wrote the white paper, and then Gavin kind of implemented the white paper and actually coded it. And then he went on to
Hmm.
build the Ethereum virtual machine, and he invented, which I don't know how that's even possible, but he invented the Solidity programming language because the guy's just a genius. And
Hmm.
that was kind of the early days of Ethereum. But at the time, Gavin, looking, 5, 6 years into the future where we are today, started realizing that some
Hmm.
of these things might need to be built a little bit differently in order to be able to keep up with the amount of growth that was expected and did happen on Ethereum, bringing us to today with these gas price issues and kind of creating a little bit of a closed environment for anyone who doesn't have a ton of ETH to be able to participate in that environment. So this is
Hmm.
how Polkadot was born. The thought here was that let's help solve some of these scalability issues, helping the network grow along with the user base, but also several other
Hmm.
things that needed to be slightly improved. So Ethereum and Bitcoin, as many people may know, are single blockchains that are kind of isolated from each other. And this,
Hmm.
if we want crypto to really take off, all these networks need to be interconnected, just like all the computers and databases and the real internet. So this is one thing that is kind of foundational to Polkadot is let's build this network of networks or this internet of blockchains that are all connected in one environment and can all kind of talk to each other. So if you're sending money or value between networks or data and information, that should all be done kind of easily and natively. Um,
Hmm.
the second thing is that securing a blockchain is not easy. If you know the Bitcoin miner network, Bitcoin mining is obviously quite complex and is required to keep that network operating. Same thing with
Hmm.
Ethereum, it's this proof of work network and helping to operate and validate the transactions on Ethereum. Same thing with proof of stake networks, which is kind of the next evolution of the security model. But if you look at networks like Solana and Terra and all these kind of solo layer one chains, all those teams had to actually go out and recruit their own set of validators and recruit hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to make sure that network is secure. Another thing that
Hmm.
Polkadot does for teams that are building on Polkadot is it provides the security for them out of the box. So you can just basically plug into Polkadot and the network is secured right away. So that's kind of the basics. It's basically just a multi-chain
Hmm.
environment where teams are building customized blockchains for specific applications and use cases.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that explanation. Being problem focused and is the best way, I think, to help people understand what it is without having to know the deep inner workings of it. So here's, I think, the best next place to go. And we talk about a multi-chain ecosystem, and we talk about an environment where many blockchains that are purpose built for a certain task or use case or product can interoperate with each other natively, per your explanation of Polkadot. These individual chains, colloquially, you might have heard the jargon parachain, and that's the name that's given to these different blockchains. How do you go about creating these blockchains and then joining the Polkadot network if you are creating one of these chains?
Yeah. So just like I mentioned, Gavin created the Solidity programming language, which is what's used to build applications on top of Ethereum.
Hmm.
He when he started Polkadot, he also built something a framework for building entire blockchains, and that's called Substrate. So Substrate, the easiest way to think of it is think of like a menu at a restaurant, or
Hmm.
even better, actually better comparison is like imagine building a Tesla. If you've seen the website, you can pick the types of tires, you can pick the engine, you
Hmm.
can pick the color of the car. These are all things that you can customize, and then the output of that is your Tesla that's built exactly how you want it. This is how
Hmm.
Substrate works for building blockchains. So there's essentially a menu of different components of a blockchain that you may or may not want to incorporate into your chain. And if you're building like a DeFi blockchain in Akala's case, you may choose certain components. Like you might want a stablecoin
Hmm.
built into the blockchain. You might want a DEX built into the blockchain, things like that. And then the output of that is the chain customized for exactly what you needed. So every team can do this. There's gaming chains, there's identity chains, there's privacy focused ones, and these are all going to combine into this world of Polkadot. And the cool thing that's coming, this is probably going to be something we'll start seeing next year, and next couple of years, is the concept of building multi-chain applications. So not building just one app on Ethereum or one app on Akala, but one application
Hmm.
that to the user, it works great, it does what you need, but behind the scenes, it's actually working with several different blockchains in the background. So this is something that we're going to see in the Polkadot ecosystem soon.
Hmm.
So to your other question, the question is basically like how do you launch on Polkadot? Is it can anyone do
Hmm.
it? What does the process actually look like? So it's totally new model that I've been kind of talking about a lot because it's a lot of people are trying to get educated on what this is, and you may have seen things maybe on Twitter or elsewhere about what's called parachain slot auctions. So on Polkadot, you can think of these slots as, I don't know, like a parking spot, or it's basically a high demand position on Polkadot that a lot of teams want because what
Hmm.
that offers is your ability to kind of earn the right to launch on Polkadot and get that security that I talked about, and also get the ability to connect to this multi-chain world. A Polkadot Polkadot parachain slot auctions are exactly what it sounds like. It's an auction. So if you're familiar with an auction of a home, people go to that auction with whatever's in their bank account and they try to buy that home against other people. Whoever wins the home, of course, gets it from the auction, and that's the end of the story there. But imagine being able to come to that auction and have, crowdsourced funds from your family, your friends, your neighbors, and you all went into the auction together. You would have a lot better chance of winning that auction versus the person coming in with a single bank account. This is
Mhm.
exactly what's happening on Polkadot right now. There's these auctions to earn a slot on Polkadot, and then teams like Acala are doing something called a crowd loan. So that's what I just compared to, like the traditional auction with your family and friends. This is a crowd of people who are part of a community. So Acala supporters, in our case, are being willing to contribute their own dot as a loan, as a 2-year loan, and basically agreeing to lock those dots in support of Acala. So we don't get to touch those
Mhm.
funds. This is not a fundraising event, but it's basically, it goes into this contract, and then we're able to just make the chain itself says like bid with this dot. So when the auction
Mhm.
starts, we'll actually bid with all the crowdsourced dot, and that'll be bidding against other parachain teams who also want the same slot. So
Mhm.
if and when Acala wins one of these parachain auctions, all the dot contributed is then locked and held trustlessly by Polkadot itself. But then
Mhm.
why would you want to participate? It's because Acala will then issue the native token of Acala, ACA, to everyone who contributed DOT in that crowd loan. So you contribute
Mhm.
DOT, you get this ACA, and then after 2 years, the reason why it's called a crowd loan is because it's a loan. You get the entire amount of DOT back after 2 years that you contributed. So of course there has to be
Mhm.
a catch. So what's the trade-off? The trade-off is that typically with DOT, this is a very strong asset in terms of earning yield through staking. It typically earns about
Mhm.
12 to 15% in staking, just passively. For people who are
Mhm.
contributing to these crowd loans, you do have to unstake your DOT. So you're basically, the trade-off is you're giving up about the 12 to 15% staking returns in return for the native token of whatever parachain team that you're supporting in their auction. And then, of course, after two
Mhm.
years, you can get all of your DOT back and do what you want with it. So that's kind of high level
Mhm.
how it works. And let me know if you have any questions about that.
No, I love it. I mean, it makes perfect sense, and I think it's good to think about the incentive and the potential opportunity cost. So for someone that's staking DOT, 12 to 15% on the top end, those types of returns are pretty solid, especially when they're relatively fixed or relatively stable.
Mhm.
And you, depending on the crowd loan that you participate in, right, you need to understand the risk profile for that native coin and the opportunity cost associated with those, two some odd years of staking rewards that you might miss out on. So that's sort of the equation people have to figure out for themselves. So for Acala, this crowd loan process to win a slot, let's say you do win that slot, what comes next after that process in terms of actually tangibly sort of going live for people to use your product?
Yeah. So it's definitely a launch kind of rollout process. So what happens
Mm-hmm.
is there's kind of batches of these auctions. So there'll be 5 auctions that happen back to back to back, starting on
Yep.
November 11th. Forgot to mention that date, important date coming up. And these will happen through almost to the end of the year, going into the year-end holiday season. So on December 15th, all the first 5 teams that win an auction, they all kind of start to onboard on the same day. And then our networks begin going live, and there's this whole kind of launch roadmap that we'll be going through. So for us, we've got a liquid dot staking product, which means you can
Mm-hmm.
stake dot, earn staking returns, but then get this liquid form of that. That product will go live first. Then we'll have our AUSD stablecoin. It's a decentralized stablecoin, kind of similar to DAI, but all focused around the DOT ecosystem. So backed by DOT and other assets like that. Then our decentralized exchange, will begin to go live, and then it's kind of off to the races. The biggest other component that will be launching right around the same time is Akala's EVM Plus environment. The reason we call it EVM
Hmm.
Plus is because we've custom built our EVM to be EVM and substrate. So it's not confined to just what you could do on Ethereum. It's kind of taking advantage of the best of Ethereum and kind of giving developers all the tools that they're used to, like
Hmm.
MetaMask for users, Truffle for developers, but then also being able to interact with everything that Gavin built and the team built on the substrate level.
Hmm.
Because to me, it's like, why would Gavin have built Substrate and Polkadot if he wanted people to just redo Ethereum on Polkadot? It doesn't make sense. We need
Yeah.
to be able to kind of start progressing into this new generation of tech. So those are kind of the four key things that will be launching, and then
Hmm.
that gets us into about January, early 2022, and developers will start building applications on Akala, and like all the liquidity will start to go live and everything like that. So we're getting excited. It's finally almost here.
Yeah. It's almost here, and liquidity is the lifeblood of DeFi, but also just of these ecosystems in general. So it's going to be important to see the the liquidity inflows for these protocols to start to kick off as everything goes live.
Yep.
But for people who've been watching, interacting with your content over the years, or with mine or other people in the space, there are plenty of creators who are aware of Polkadot and been talking about this space for a while. This is why we've been talking about it for all this time. It's because what's being built is really impactful. And now I think people will get to see that in action and actually tangibly get to use it and interact with it. So I am very excited,
Yeah.
very much so.
People tend to be, and I guess myself included, people tend to be a little bit impatient with this kind of tech.
Oh, yeah.
We had a conference for Polkadot a few months ago, and Gavin said that he built the first version of Ethereum in 3 weeks. And he was trying to compare that
Mhm.
to like, I built Substrate and Polkadot with 50 expert developers over 3 or more years. It's because it's so
Mhm.
complex. I know developers
Yes.
who are learning how to code Substrate. It's not an easy thing to learn. So it has taken time to get to this point, but I think this next kind of phase that we're about to see in crypto and DeFi and DApp, just innovation that's possible because of this new network and architecture, it's going to be really exciting to see where everything kind of evolves.
Without a doubt. And the fundamental thing is building things in this space, particularly approaching the interoperability side of things even more so. It's very important that all the details are sort of feverishly approached in a very clear way and addressed, because it needs to be done right the first time. There's
Hmm.
no like do-overs if something were to go wrong. And so the time it takes to build is really important, so that it's adequately tested and ready to go when
Exactly.
users go to use it. Yeah. So I wanted to wrap with one sort of last philosophical question. And of course, you can just kind of give me your perspective off the cuff. Do you think that in the future, through a protocol like Polkadot, do you think that the age of sort of single chain maximalism can come to an end, in the sense that Ethereum and Bitcoin, even not sort of non-native chains, could eventually come to interoperate through these protocols, whether via bridges or more native solutions? Like, do you think that's where the future is going?
Yeah, I think so. Even in the last few months, like doing kind of business development calls and talking to other teams, it's been substantially different recently in people's openness to
Hmm.
work with other ecosystems. So, like
Hmm.
if you look at the bridges that are being built between a lot of these major layer ones, I think that is like in 2022 going to be a huge trend, is everyone's going to be connected. And then there'll just be liquidity kind of flowing everywhere. Part of crypto is that there's just such a financial motivation for some people, especially people that are early in certain ecosystems. So I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think that the kind of a little bit of, I don't know, pride or tribalism in a certain type of
Hmm.
community or tech will go away necessarily, but I think there will be more open. I don't think it'll be as close-minded, like to one thing. I think it'll be much more open-minded to how can how can this network help make mine better, and how can we make them better. We're still very early and very small in comparison to most industries, so most
Mhm.
likely going to see that kind of continue to progress. The other thing is just the concept of these multi-chain applications. That's another thing that I think we're going to see, is that the users, like my mom and dad, should not have any idea what blockchain that their application is built on.
Yeah.
And if we can all provide different benefits to the user and different benefits to the developers, there's no reason why these applications shouldn't be built, kind of hiding whatever blockchain is built behind it, but also the potential to use several different blockchains that may add certain benefits or components to an application. So yeah, we'll have to see where things are going, but it's definitely becoming much more connected.
Exciting times. Really, actually achieving the borderlessness that people always have described crypto as, or these environments as, will hopefully finally come to fruition. So I'm very very hopeful that that is the case. But Dan, thanks so much for taking the time to talk through this, to share intro on Polkadot, and to explain the parachain auctions and a little bit about what Acala is trying to achieve. I will have to do this again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Let's do it again soon.
Awesome. For those who are watching, please do check out Dan's Twitter. I will link that up down below. Check out Acala and Polkadot if you want to dive in more. Also, there will be links below, as all YouTubers often say. And I want to thank you for spending the time and watching. And until next time, cheers.